You ever get out to the mountain bike trails, Brad? You ever
I
been out
did.
there?
I was just saying before you joined us that I was there with my family. I guess it was 2 years ago now. And that picture that I took there in, I think the English Settlement Road, at the end of the English
Yeah.
Settlement Road where you parked there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's from when we were out there at that time.
Okay.
And there were some radical edge people biking there. It's a great spot for a mountain bike.
Yeah, they've changed it. If you go back that road about a kilometer, they've built a little facility.
Oh,
And now when they have certain events, they have that facility open for a bit of a mini bar and a little barbecue stuff. And
okay.
yeah, so they're
Oh, that's
improving it all.
great.
They're making it better all the time. They're doing great.
That's excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I can see the pits in the water. That's when you have up, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it. The pits in the water and the nice aquamarine color.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yep. So.
Yeah, I was wondering, can you swim in that water? Do you know if
Oh, we did our whole lives.
is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you're supposed to, but we always did.
Okay. Oh, you're still here kicking and
Yeah. I'm not
having a
kicking
good
quite
time.
as hard. Not kicking as high as I used to.
As long as your shoulder's okay for bowling, you're all right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Brad, do you fellas deal with the ice down around the lake? Like, do you measure season to season kind of thing, year over year, or is that something?
Oh, you mean like a record of the ice in,
Yeah,
ice
of
out?
the ice
Well,
thicknesses and things of that nature.
I've never done thickness, but
No.
our water quality coordinator, Eric Luker, said that would be a great record to have.
Yeah, because
and I did get a partial record from
Yeah.
somebody at Fanjoy Point, and her mother was keeping the record for maybe 20 years. And I
Okay.
did post that record on one of the newsletters. I can look it up if you want. But
It'd
it
be
would be,
interesting because it tells you, like, is spring coming sooner, I guess, is one of the
yeah,
indicators, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's really interesting. So I don't know. I put out in an email, one of our monthly newsletter emails, asking for volunteers if they had any knowledge of record keeping for ice in,
Okay.
ice out. But
Yeah.
I even contacted the government about
yes.
publishing some data from Fredericton, but they've even stopped doing the ice in, ice out measures that they used to
really?
do and
Okay.
publish in Fredericton.
Yeah.
I don't know what the reason was. This person was from Environment and Climate Change Canada.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe it's too hard to do. It's too unreliable to get, like, when is it in or out? It depends where you
Right.
are on the lake, and there's a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be interesting to know, though, to see if the times are
Absolutely.
changing,
If,
right?
if
Yeah.
it was the same place every year, that you could get
Yeah.
a good reading on it.
Yeah.
I agree. Oh, Sandy is asking, are the ponds, Sandy McDonald he has a summer place in McQuappin. Are the ponds still stocked with trout?
No. Well,
I
yes
don't
and
know.
no. They do. If they have some, they will put them in, but it's not a common practice anymore. The hatchery's now closed,
Okay.
so they don't produce them. But occasionally, the government puts them in if they have them from another hatchery, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, not like they once did.
No. Okay. So it sort of died out.
It's past it. Well, they used to, use water from the power plant and things like that. So that's all gone, and the hatchery was owned by that as well. So that got transferred over, and it's in a stage of not operating. So
Sort of dormant at the moment.
yeah, at this stage, yep.
Okay. So
somebody
did
may
they
start it
did
up
they
again.
use the warm water from the plant for the hatchery?
Well, for some things, but the hatchery itself was down the road a bit and used a natural overflow.
Okay.
Yeah, but they did actually
Okay.
use the warm water at one time for a greenhouse over glass greenhouses. Used the warm water at one time
Okay.
to raise tomatoes
Yeah.
and other vegetables. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yeah, that extra heat is valuable for all kinds
Well,
of
it was it was wasted, right? So they
Yeah.
used it. So
Yeah.
went to a good purpose.
Okay, so I guess the answer to Sandy's question, they're not stocked regularly.
No,
But,
there may be some left, but they don't stock them on a regular basis
okay,
anymore.
so they're just
Sandy.
whatever survived and continue to
Yeah,
reproduce and
Yeah.
get fresh water. My name is Brad Nickerson. I am a member and past president of the Gemsay Grand Lake Watershed Association. I'm going to leave this slide up for a little bit. Excuse me. We are very grateful to Peter Dufour for taking the time to prepare this webinar and for sharing his deep knowledge of the coal mining and land reclamation operations with us this evening in the Minto area. Our watershed, the Gemsay Grand Lake watershed, covers 3,950 square kilometers, which is about 70% of the size of Prince Edward Island. It's a big watershed, but it's still a sub-watershed of the 55,000 square kilometer Woolastook or St. John River watershed. Grand Lake at 171 square kilometers is the largest freshwater lake in the Maritimes. If you are not already a member of our association, we'd love for you to join us. Memberships cost $10 a year and support our activities, including the organization and hosting of this webinar. Visit our website to join us and click on the little blue Join Us button in the upper right corner. So we welcome your questions. You can ask questions at any time, but you'll need to use the chat window. So if you can type the question in the chat window as you think of it, it's the best way to do it. And then I'm going to keep track of all the questions in a timed fashion, and then I will ask them at the end or during the presentation, whichever is appropriate, in the order that we receive them. Hopefully we'll have time at the end to answer everybody's questions. So if not, if we don't, we'll hopefully follow up with an email with Peter if he'd be willing to answer a few questions. Send it to our email address, the gemsaygrandlakewatershed@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to get an answer for you. All right, we're going to have a quick live poll now. This is to sort of give Peter an idea of what people know about coal mining. So I'm going to put a little poll up on the screen, and there's going to be 5 answers there. Just click one as soon as you read the question and the answers. You can only choose one, and then we're going to see live in about 50 seconds or so what the answer everybody most thought the answer was. So I'm going to launch this webinar, and you can just click one of those buttons. When did coal mining start in the Minto, New Brunswick area? And you can answer just one button click, and we're seeing it live here. So 34 people have already answered the question. And if you could just maybe click what answer you think is appropriate, then we'll kind of see what the general knowledge of this amazing industry that is no longer operating in Minto, but was operating. And Peter has some really interesting stories about that time period. Okay, we're at 1:20, so I'm going to end the poll now, and I'm going to share the results so we all can see it. And this, hopefully everybody can see that and kind of get a sense. Peter would surely have a sense. I think most of the people that answered the first one, 1639, probably live in the Minto area, I expect. Yeah. But Peter's going to tell us precisely when it started and what happened when it started in just a moment. All right, so Peter, I'm going to introduce Peter here. Just a few words about Peter. He grew up in Minto, New Brunswick, and joined New Brunswick Coal Ltd in 1977. He first worked as part of the survey crew constructing the Marion 8200 series dragline, which was required to replace several smaller, older machines. Upon completion of that project, he moved over to the drill and blast team for mine operations. He's probably seen everything that can happen in a strip mining operation. NB Coal was very progressive in training and allowed his training to include blast engineer. He was later able to get training in all aspects of mine operations. Land reclamation was part of that training and was very helpful as reclamation became part of the mine operating license. Land reclamation became a larger factor in coal mining operations over time, And in 1990, Peter became operations manager of the mine until 2009. That's 19 years, when the mine and NB Power Grand Lake Generating Station closed. Starting in 2010, he moved to the wastewater treatment plant as the operations supervisor and continues there until today. Peter, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can share your screen there and
try that. Okay, we'll begin. Story. This is basically a story, and that's what I'm telling. Is a story about 375 years of coal history in the Grand Lake region. So,
excellent.
The provincial archive records show that the first shipment of coal was sent to Boston in 1639 from Grand Lake, and that began the Grand Lake coal industry. How it was done? Well, at the beginning, coal was mined basically out of banks and hillsides when people would find outcroppings and along the stream and along the hills and gather the coal for their own use and maybe for bartering at that time. And then they collected as far as they could in the banks and used it. And the coal seams then were 24 to 36 inches thick and was very soft. So that was the beginning of how the coal industry began and used. So from there, we went into a shaft mining mode where as requirements increased for coal, they found better ways to do it. And what they would do is sink a shaft straight down into the coal level, and then they would put shafts out in all directions to gather the coal, and they would return it to the bottom of the shaft, and then they would take it up the shaft to the surface and either go to a heating plant or wherever it went, a customer, or stockpiled on site. Originally, these shafts, you would go up and down in a basket, men would, along with their waste and coal. And that was used, horses were used to bring that to the surface. In the later years, when electricity came around, electric lifts were used. And this method was continued along with dragline mining until the early 1970s. This is a picture here of a shaft at Old Avon, we call it, but I guess it's Rothwell now and part of Grand Lake, the new municipality. So that was one of the shafts. That was one of the last shafts, but that's probably mid-60s, somewhere in that range.
Peter, yep. There's a question here from Don Mador, I think it is.
Yep. Hi, Donnie.
He was asking about these shafts. Are there any records of those shafts and where they exist in the Minto area?
Don, there was a lot of records on that, and they were all compiled when the companies became NB Coal in 1969. But unfortunately, there was a fire in the early 70s which destroyed the NB Coal office at that time, and most of those records were in there. And a little further, there are many shafts still open. I call it many, but some are still open, and many air shafts are still open. But as far as mapping them, there's really no real good records that I know of. There may be some private ones, but there's no more on file.
Yeah, he had a related question there too. Something about does it cause any ecosystem problems having old underground workings? Does it affect the water quality or in the area?
I really can't answer that because it's not something we track, the underground water. I know there's a fair amount of people use their water softeners for manganese and things like that, but I can't relate that to the underground works at all.
Okay, so
yeah, I hope that helps, Don.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Peter.
Yep. And this photo is of a recovery of tailings that one time was done out of a stream where there used to be a wash plant for coal. It washed down, and the tailings were recovered and stockpiled here and sold back to the industry, and that was probably in the 80s.
1980s, you mean?
In the 80s, yeah, 1980s. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's all I can remember. The others I wasn't in. So,
you weren't around. Okay.
Yeah. So this here's a picture of a crew from an underground shaft, and nobody appears that I know who they are, but they would be mainly made up at the time. The industry was growing after the wars, and a lot of immigration happened, And really, the immigrants that came here, my family and other families, were the backbone of the coal industry at the time. It wouldn't have been able to grow without those people. So if anybody knows somebody in that photo, let us know. So in 1905 or so, I think it was, the first strip mining began using steam machines. Steam shovels was what they were at the time. And they were then strip mining. They would strip the entire surface off down to the coal, and then the coal was loaded out and for market. And first it was steam, and then diesel became the big power, and then of course electricity became far more efficient, and that all the machines over time went to electric. The sort of the last diesel machines lasted until about 1995 and doing that type of work. But the coal itself was never managed, never handled by the drag lines. It was always handled by loaders and trucks and people in the pit, so and hauled out that way. People may have thought that the drag lines moved the coal, but they didn't. They just stripped everything but the coal itself. So this here is a picture of the Salmon Harbor mine and the large 8200 Marion drag line, and it operated from 1979 to 2010. It was built from 77 to 78 and then went into operation. And as you can see, it would produce about 300,000 tons of coal a year. And that coal either went to Beldoon Power Plant or the Grand Lake Power Plant. And it mined about 80 acres a year. I think one of the questions was, where's that machine now, Brad?
Yeah, John Pickle wanted to know where the dragline machines ended up.
That machine right now is in North Carolina, and it's mining phosphate.
Okay.
That's where it is. It got sold and taken apart and transferred there and put back together. So it's still in operation.
Okay.
So, that's a picture of it there. What I'm showing that for is the pit, but you'll see on the right-hand side that there's a picture of a drill. They're getting ready for a blast. All that blasting had to take place. All the material had to be blasted before the drag line could move it. So this is a picture of a good picture, I think, of a blast. You'll see if you go clockwise from your upper left, you'll see the sort of the ground moving as the blast went off as best we could in sequence. And the idea was to blast it upward, not outward, because the machine had to set on the blasted material after, so that it could remove it. So there was a technique where we had to blow it upward but not outward in order to maintain the bank. So that's sort of the blasting that we did. And for information purposes, we used about 0.6 pounds of explosives per every yard of material to break it down to a usable size. This is a picture of inside of the dragline, the 8200 dragline that we were maybe doing some maintenance. I just wanted to give you a perspective on the size. Those rollers on the side are basically what the long cables were on a 350-foot boom. The cable would go up the boom and down and hold the bucket, and used it on the stripping method. So that just to give you a perspective on size. And like I say, on the top, there was always a good view. If you had some work to do, they would get out and do their best at the top of that boom, and the view was always good. The second machine we had during most of my time was the 1260, which is about half the size of the 8200, and it was called the Lady of the Lake dragline. It operated here for only 8 or 9 years, from 92 to 2000. But as the industry started to downsize, we let that machine go, and it used to operate in Coal Creek, mined about 150,000 tons, and disturbed about 60 acres of land annually. And that machine, to answer Mr. Pickle's second question, is in Fort Myers, Florida, and it's mining sand. So
interesting.
And this is one of the older machines that there was some bad days as well. This is a machine that didn't go well that particular day. That's the 9W.
Can you show where that challenge is there with your mouse? I couldn't quite see it.
The boom itself is supposed to be up in the air, and it's laying across here onto the spoil piles. The machine started to go in, and the only thing kept it from going all the way in is when the boom got fetched up on the spoil piles, or mud dumps, as Carlin Rod like to call them. And so it got there. What we ended up having to do is we had to fill in the pit in front of it, go behind where what we call the tub, which is the base of the machine, had to dig out what we could, and the last bit we had to put some dynamite in and blow it out so the machine would sit back up in its right place. So everybody was fine after that, but a little shaken up. But it was just a bad day. Now here's an aerial photo of the Salmon Harbor mine of the 8200 dragline. You'll see basically how the rows, how they would mine it. On the far end is what we call our box cut. They would take one cut, one box going to my right, I guess, and then they would strip mine back to where the dragline's sitting now, and they would go back to the other end and do it again, and that created these long rows. And the reason for doing that is that the far end was the lower end, so water would want to run away from the operation so that we didn't have to pump water fully length of the pit. This is a picture of the same location in the pit, and what you're seeing here is the trucks and loaders and tractors preparing and getting the coal loaded out for market. And you'll see the loaders, how they put it in. Tractor in the background was piling it up. The loaders would load these small trucks, and they would go to the Grand Lake plant. And then we would load long haul trucks that about twice the size, and they would haul coal to Belledoux. They would haul 2 loads a day, where the small trucks would haul 8 to 10 loads per day. Some things we would find occasionally is these are fossils of a fern, and that's probably a 3-foot fern. We would find a lot of those. And the other thing we would find was a lot of perforated trees standing in the walls, and some as much as 70, 80 feet high, the full tree. And when it would come down in pieces. And a lot of people would gather those up, and I'm sure there's many still kicking around the area.
Yeah. We have a question from Brian Richardson on that point.
Hi, Brian.
Yeah. He says, when my father, Jimmy, worked in the underground, he would often bring home some beautiful fossils, which we would take to school for show and tell.
Yeah.
Are you aware of any of these still exist?
Yeah, quite a few still exist. People have them. And the fossils themselves, once they hit the air, seem to want to break up. And so people that would understand that then would varnish them. So there's quite a few kicking around. And I know I have a few here. And there's what we call tree stumps, which were pieces of these trees around yet in a lot of places. So yeah, they are around.
Okay.
So that's the mine history basically up till 2010. And at that time, environmental reasons and cost and those things became a problem. And in 2010, the coal industry finally closed. But no employees were left out of the process at that time. There was a big consideration for them, and some took early retirement, and others were given the opportunity to go to NB Power, such as myself. So it was a good thing. And we've seen the picture earlier of the one coal mining type, and here's another. This is the generations later what coal miners were like. So they're still coal miners, but we didn't go to work in the same way, I guess.
Could I interrupt you again, Peter? Sorry,
Yes.
There's an interesting comment from Vicky Nash. Says, I found a few of these fossils and donated it to Quartermain Museum.
Okay.
And I think it's in the basement in the old forestry building at UNB.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of them were taken by the, not taken, but offered up and taken by the Department of Natural Resources in Fredericton for sure. I'm sure there's a bunch there.
Yes.
And it's a good thing, like it's a
And
good part
we
of
have
history.
another question while I get you distracted. Is
Please do.
David Kearns wants to know, how thick was the coal layer?
Usually between 20 and 30 inches, and in the 2-foot range, 24 inch. I don't know what that is in metric, Brad. I'm too old. So
What'd you say, 24 inches?
24 inches, yeah. So that's about 60 centimeters, I guess, somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
something like that.
Yeah. So then we went on to a reclamation, and we had some challenges which were identified. We did an audit in 2008 to 2008 to identify all the mines and what we had, and we had to consider the 1977 Mining Act. There was rules and regulations, and then there was the 1984 Reclamation Agreement, which was for coal only. The other mines in the province had their own agreements, and ours was, as you can see, we had to slope all the banks that were left open, the high walls. We had to conserve some of the soil, make sure that there was no high erosion areas and no ponding unless approved by DNR. And we had to make sure that the Clean Water Act was followed. So from one of our goals and challenges was we wanted to submit mine closures for for 26 mines identified in the '08 audit. So there was actually 27 identified, but one was still active in treatment. So in that report, we identified that there was close to 6,000 acres and 110,000 linear feet of high wall, and that high wall would range from 40 feet to 120 feet deep. So we set our targets to submit 5 closures a year for a mine, six mines out of 26, and recontour 25,000 linear feet and 250 acres annually. So we went to work. And what I'm showing here is the upper end of the lake, I guess the north end, and showing all the yellow, green, and blue were mines that were done. Those mines were ranged anywhere from 5 acres to 2,000 acres in size, with the big blue one in the middle is Salmon Harbor, was 2,000 acres, and there's a couple of smaller ones that were done in that period that we had to follow up on. So it was a challenge. Mm-hmm. So we went and reviewed sort of the history of mining reclamation, and these are pre-NB Coal. These are things that were done prior to NB Coal up until the 1977 period. And mostly it was just tree planting, and they're mostly a pine in that time because they were readily available, and reclamation was done with, in a way that I guess was proper at the time, but not in the new standard. So some of them were left to their own devices. As you can see, these have become nice mountain bike trails, Brad, by the way. So a lot of them are left like this, and were left to grow naturally. So, and as well, there's another one that this one had been leveled a bit and then replanted, and it's Coal Creek Mine Pit 1, and for people in the Chipman area, that's known as the 1260 road. So what we did here, as you can see, there was piles of this, 6,000 acres of this type of thing, but what this picture shows you is that as much as possible, the topsoil was top stripped and put back onto the mine piles, so that when reclamation was done, the organic material would be on the top rather than buried on the bottom. So, so we went to work and used our large bulldozers. These are D9s and D10s that were used, which at the time were some of the largest tractors in the world and still are. And they worked 24 hours a day at this for 7 or 8 years to do this work. So, and some days it was a bad day, just like drag lines. So they were quite heavy. They sank. They were there for a while. So this one had a bad day. So going to the high walls, you can see these are high walls on the right. That's a high wall existing there, and on the second picture, the high wall is actually on the left. And these had to be eliminated totally to pass government regulation. So the one on the now I'm showing here is one on the left is now the one on the right after completion. So it showed that the type of work that needed to be done, the water was eliminated, and the safety problems were taken care of. And they were later, different things happened. Trees were planted, seedlings, different studies were done to say this is what was there before, and some of that was put back. So there were different ways. And this is where I showed you earlier where we had to do the soil amendment. So that was another picture showing it. This another site was in Coal Creek North, Pit 7. It's not, you'd have to live there to know which pit's which, but some of them were used, as you'll see, for demolition purposes. People didn't go to the dump, they went here, get rid of it. So we salvaged all that material, took it to the proper places, and returned it to what it looks like on the right-hand side. Some of the other ones, this is also that pit at the other end that you'll see the water running through it, and it's the same picture on the right-hand side a year later. So Salmon Harbor Mine was a complete reclamation project. It was our biggest and I think probably our best work. We did some things there that we didn't do other places. We added, as you can see, we used a lot of wetlands, which was good because it was near the lake, and recontoured it almost to a flat, and added hay and trees and a whole lot of natural things that were there before. So, and one other project we did do at Salmon Harbor is we used to plant 20,000 trees a year using the Boy Scouts, and we got up to 10 years with that, and about 250,000 jack pine were planted at Salmon Harbor, and they're all growing well now. Now this is a private property. Mr. Barton in Coal Creek owned it, and the whole field was a mud dump at one time, or spoil pile, and we reclaimed it flat, and the piles you see in front are his winter manure that he would use to spread on his hay field and recover his hay. So it was a win for us and a win for him over the long haul. Something else we did to a private contractor was they used to raise 115,000 salmon fry for the St. John River. These are in one of the pits, was enclosed, the fish couldn't go anywhere, and this went on for about 10 years, and this was a private individual, did a real good job. That operation has since closed as he's passed away. So this site here is near Northside Drive, and it's grown even greater than what you see there, but you'll see on the left there's a walk trail, and it goes all around that, and it travels right from almost along the banks of the Newcastle stream, and is a great walking trail, and it's part of the Canada Trail Passage. And today, to finish up a bit, we have completed 26 of the 27 sites, and we're pretty proud of the fact that we were quite diverse in what we did. We used natural vegetation. We used a lot of wetlands. You can go to them now, and there's a lot of waterfront development. You wouldn't know they were mine sites. There's cottages on them. A lot of it was and still is fish habitat. We did some forest plantation and recreation. And the recreation, I guess for me, that's what I'm proudest most of is the mountain bike trail. But we'll see that as we go through here. Now I'm going to show you few more pictures of what it looks like after we've done. This here's about 10 years after work we did at Coal Creek. On top of that's on middle of a mine somewhere, Coal Creek Pit 1, which is again on the 1260 road. See some. This here's another one that was had been recently reclaimed and is been back contoured and now is a bit of a wetland in the range. You wouldn't be able to find it today if you went in there. I don't think you'd know that it was a mine. You'd have a hard time finding it. So this is Coal Creek Pit 6, and this area here is privately owned now, and it's an area that's a beautiful wetland, probably 20 acres of wetland, and used a lot of animals in the area. A lot of people use it for walking and things of that nature. So it's a pretty nice spot to be. This is another one that's on the back side of that site we just seen. That would be on the right-hand side of the picture there. This would be it, and that's all regrown now. So this is some more trees. If you see, that's just more of an island of trees. What they do when we did some reclamation, we would leave these small spaces of trees so that they would spread their seed naturally. That's one of the things we would do, is leave them natural. So you'll see one there, and if you look in the space between the two trees, you'll see another little island in the back, and since then they've all grown in. So this is a Northside Drive, which is probably the biggest wetland we have. It's probably 400 feet wide and about 3 kilometers long, and it's just like this the whole way, and it's right full of ducks and frogs and hopefully not snakes. They're not my favorite, but I'm sure they're there. So it's a beautiful spot if you get there. 18 Brook is another one north, which is out across from Albright's Corner in there. You're seeing some work was being done at that time that this picture was taken, and it's since grown back to a very natural state and very usable, and the water's high quality water, which flows into 18 Brook itself. So this is Salmon Harbor, which in the last 10 years or so, this is a picture been taken showing more wetlands. And again, that's not the same one we've seen earlier. They're just spread out on the 2,000 acres, quite a few of them. And this is like a 15-year reclamation picture after 15 years, what we're getting. And then there's what it looks like 25 years after reclamation. It's grown in greatly, and a lot of different bird species. There's been 4 different species at risk identified in these areas and things of that nature. So a lot of work's been done to make us forget about the coal industry, I guess is the best way to put it. And we want to know how it's going. Well, we ask the residents that live there. So these are frog and bees, and they're very happy people to be living there. So this photo is one of what is New Avon, and it's one of our proud spots in the fact that this is where probably the center of the mountain bike Minto group is. And you can see those trails, and those have grown up quite a bit, but the people that do this have made some great trails out of this and made basically a nice industry for us out of this whole mountain biking business. And it doesn't have to be mountain biking, it can be mountain walking. It's just a nice place to go see if you get an opportunity. So now the last site, the 27th site that we didn't mention out of the 26 is the Fire Road water treatment plant, and that's a special case. It has to be continued to be treated for a while, and so in order to do that, NB Power at the time, which was 2005, when decision was made to start closing down, they went out and sent around getting all the best technology in the world on how to treat this problem of acid mine runoff, and brought them ideas back to this plant and built them. And the plant is fully automated and is easily managed, and it's where I work today. And it's like you see, it's been in operation since '86. The site has, but that plant itself is only 2005. About 1.8 billion liters of water is treated annually. Daily volumes obviously vary by season, and we have to maintain a particular water level so no water leaves the site untreated. And if any water goes through the plant and is off spec, it's sent right back to the holding ponds, because it must meet or exceed the license of operation, which is quite high standards. For that, there's 4 types of meters used to make sure the confidence and the test results are there. Water is tested twice a day. It's tested weekly and monthly, and it's all reported to the government. And these reports have to be maintained for years on their site and ours. And in the testing, we include the pH of it and suspended solid, which are the 2 main things for us. But when we send them off to Fredericton, there's 32 metals from aluminum to zinc. So I don't know what's in there, the other 20 or another 30 metals. So the other thing we do is we do fish lethality testing, which is where we send water off to a lab in Halifax. They insert fish in it, and if these fish have to pass this test of water, and knock on wood, we've never had a failure of any of those tests. We've never had a fish die. So that's all part of what we have to do to make sure, and reporting of this is all done by license. And to finish up, that's another mine site that is we're hoping going to be used in the future. So Brad, that's about what I got to say. If there's a few questions,
yeah, that's an excellent presentation. Thank you, Peter. Yeah, we have a number of questions. I'm going to start in the order I received them. And okay. The first one was from Dwight Northrop. Is there any attempt to repair the land damage before 2010? Actually,
not now, but when we started in 08, we went back to the 69, where NB Coal became a company, and started reclaiming at that number, although we weren't required to. We did from 69 to 77 as well as what was required from 77 on. But prior to that, there's been no effort to go before that. That's not what we did everything that NB Coal was supposed to do. But no, there are several mines and lots of spoil piles yet reclaimed.
Okay. So that started in 69 with NB Coal, you say? I didn't
Correct. September 1st, 1969, NB Coal basically took over the mining industry from private industry.
Okay, got it. All right, we have another question from Sean Morrissey. He asks, are any high walls left? Are they all
Yes, there is, Sean. There's many pre-69 high walls left. I wouldn't say many, but some left. Yes, there are. They're fairly remote now. They're not somewhere you get too handy because they were farther away, but yeah, they are available.
Okay. And Mike Wolf asks, were the black locust trees planted in the area intentionally?
Yes, they were.
Did they spread naturally? Okay.
No, well, they spread naturally, but they were planted. Yeah, they felt at the time they were a good shelter or whatever for birds and small animals to, hide from predators and things of that nature. So it was something that they learned that from somebody had told them back in the day that that was a good thing, and so they were planted on mostly on the Salmon Harbor mine, I think. And
Okay.
before it was Salmon Harbor, it was mined by smaller drag lines in some of the areas. So yeah, they were planted.
Okay. I don't think I've ever seen any of those around there.
You wouldn't like
But
them.
no, why not?
But I got big barbs on them, but it's
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So it's, well, I guess it would be good for some animals and birds, but maybe not so
right.
good for larger animals.
That was the point, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So Dusan Sudek asks, does NB Coal or the province maintain ownership of much of the former mines?
No, they basically don't own any of it. It's been returned to the private landowner that had it at the beginning, or it's Crown land.
Okay. So NB
Like,
Power
like
really. Okay.
the only thing we own now, NB Power owns, is the site that I work at now, the Fire Road.
Uh-huh. Okay, got it. And that's the treatment plant. And that takes us to
Correct.
that takes us to our next question, which is how long? This is a question from Carl Duvenverden. He asks, how long will this water treatment plant continue to operate?
We actually had a meeting about that very recently, and it's down to a very minimal amount, but we suspect it could be another decade at least.
Okay.
Yep.
So it depends on what over a long-term average, what the results are of the treatment.
Right. There's targets to hit for water quality and less metals and so on, and when those targets are hit, but it's a very slow curve right now.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So a couple of other questions. Someone asks, yes, I missed the first bit. Is the cut water drinkable, and can you safely swim in it?
I don't know about the drinkable part. A lot of the water has been tested and will pass drinking, but I don't know all of them in that case. And people swim in them quite regularly, yes.
Okay, very
But
good.
as far as the water quality, I can't speak on that. It's not something, we don't do all those open pits.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Sandy McDonald asks, that question was from Terry Murphy. Sandy McDonald asks, did you say the maps for the mine shafts were lost? And if so, could the locations be found with LiDAR? Or
the maps were lost, and there's still many shafts you could find, and I'm not real familiar with LiDAR as to what it does and doesn't do, Brad, so I couldn't tell you that.
Yeah.
I could take you to a couple of open shafts and some things like that, but what you can find the rest with, I don't know.
Yeah, the LiDAR is pretty good. It's quite accurate and high resolution today. So
yeah,
I guess that's an open question that someone could maybe try. There is good LiDAR in the Minto area. I know that.
Yeah.
The whole province, actually.
Yeah.
Another question here from Dusan Sudek. What fish species were introduced into the new ponds? Were any introduced?
Yes, there was mostly they were like a trout.
Okay.
Was the main one, and bass there's currently one that's full of bass that was
Okay.
at one time introduced by an indigenous group.
Okay.
So, and now they're not operating there, but the fish are still there.
Okay. So there's bass and trout
Right.
that were introduced at one time.
We're introduced, yeah.
Yeah. This a comment from Ward Hunter. Another reason black locust was planted is because they are nitrogen fixing and they aid to restore soil nutrients.
Perfect. That's a good thing. Yeah. It's
all right. Another question from Sean Morrissey. Do you know why the water is that turquoise color?
Well, only what I read, I guess, in the magazines is that the soil that was piled up was very alkaline at the time, and over a period of time, the rain and the weathering washed it into the water, and it basically made it become this aqua color, which is very nice, you know. But it's high alkaline, I guess, is what's happening in those pits.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it's not the other way. It's not going to be acidic. It's going to be alkaline. It's
No,
usually
if
not
the acidic
bad.
side is what we're treating at the other
Yeah.
operation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a rich
there's a
color.
comment here from Mike Wolf to everyone. He says, yes, with LiDAR, shaded relief from the GONB, they should be easily identifiable, those older shafts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Peggy Woolsey asks, how were the wetlands restored? The wetlands
They were basically the elevations were that they basically would be no more than a couple feet deep, and cattails were started, different types of species of brush were started at the time and allowed to spread naturally.
Okay, so there were actually cattails planted, and
Yep.
you know,
Willows was another one, and some other things
Okay.
like that. So, yeah, it was done on purpose, I guess.
Okay.
Yep.
Mike Wolf again seems to have lots of comments on the LiDAR. 2 or 3 ridges around a small depression show a shaft.
Yeah, there's no question you can find the shaft, but I can't tell you where they went underground. I guess that's the shafts are identifiable still because a lot of them haven't grown well, but that the above ground isn't too bad, but underground I can't help.
Yeah, there may still not even be anything.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's pretty well it. Oh, there's a comment here from Sean Morrissey. We had one of the big ponds in New Avon tested. I'm not sure where that is. And the test came back safe for swimming.
Yeah, that would be right in this area, Brad, that I'm showing the slide again. That's the New Avon that I spoke of earlier.
Okay.
Yep, that would be one of those large ponds, Sean, I'm guessing, yeah.
But the test for drinking water is a little stricter, if I remember right.
Yep, it is, yeah. No question. So there are reports available on those, but it's not something like I have on the top of my head. I know that testing was done during the reclamation phase.
Okay, good. There's a note from Vicki Nash. She said she worked on some of the wetland restoration, manual transplants for donor sites for the most part, and many a lost boot in the muck.
Yeah, she's right, yeah.
Greg Gillis says, good job, Peter. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
And Terry Murphy says, I'll be taking a dip this summer. Well, there you go.
Well, probably not your first, Terry, right? Yeah.
The work to restore wetlands after mine sites were closed was comprehensive and very successful. That's a note from Debbie Peck. Good work, Peter.
Oh, I haven't seen Debbie in a while. Hi, Debbie.
Yeah, a lot of great comments. And
good.
And I don't see any other questions. We're getting a lot of great presentations. Good job, Peter. You know, the people really appreciate it. And I want to thank you again also. That was wonderful to see those pictures and stories, hear the stories. Minto has been mining coal since 1639, so maybe we can turn that land into something else that can generate energy.
Well, it is happening. Things are being done there, like more than recreation for sure. There's will be a harvest of trees there before many more years.
Yeah, that's right.
People would be, I think, impressed when they get out and see the type of the sites that they are, these wetlands in particular. So if you're in the area, please look. Yeah.
There's lots of things to do and see down in Minto. Yeah. There's one more question from John Russell. Yep. He said, you mentioned amendments to the soil. What was added, why, and in what locations? And a very specific question, what is the soil pH, and was any adjustment made to the soil pH?
When at the beginning there was no amendments made, and the soil pH was very low, very acidic soil. So at that time that's when they determined that they'd want us to put the organic matter, the natural organic matter, back onto the top of the pile so it could blend it in, and that changed the surface pH quite dramatically from probably 4.5 to the 6 range, and made it much quicker to recover. And that took place starting about the mid 80s. Or the soil going on the top best we could. There were some other amendments tried, right from sewage treatment plant waste was tried in a small spot. There was a paper waste tried from St. John. You know, as you've seen in the Barton property, there was, you know, manure added. So those were more natural amendments than anything, but they were added.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
more money organic stuff.
Yeah, more natural organic stuff, not fertilizers or any of those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess that's it for questions. So we're going to
Perfect.
wrap it up this evening. I want to
Okay.
thank you for your presentation again and for doing the work
Yep.
it takes to get this organized.
One more thing, Brad, if
Sure.
to answer about fossils, if you're in Minto sometime, there is a museum that has a lot of those things in it. It's at our village museum at what we call the Caboose, right on Main Street. You can go in there anytime and see the old pit lamps and some of those things that were used for mining. So if people have an interest, especially in the fossils, they're there.
Where is that again? Is it
It's
in the village?
right on Main Street, Minto, right across from where we would say our bank is on Main Street. It's called the Caboose. There's a museum inside the small caboose. Okay,
and I know from experience that we have excellent pictures at the village office from the from you know along the lines of what you've been showing, but even more details on the generating station and things that were done in the early days in the 30s.
They actually have a replica of the 8200 built, a miniature, and they have a replica of a shaft mine.
Oh, is that right?
That they display as well. Yep, and they use those for somebody calls, they want to put them in a parade or whatever, they do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Thanks again, and thank you everybody for attending. And we will send a note out to everybody who registered for this webinar when the actual video production or edited video is available on our YouTube channel. So you'll get a second reminder as well.
Thanks, Brad.
All right. Very good. Happy snow shoveling.
Yeah.
We'll see you later. Thanks, Peter.